So girls, we're going to continue with the Orchidaceae family. Now the Orchidaceae is a family which is the largest group of flowering plants is found under this family. In the Orchidaceae, they are perennial herbs mostly, which means that they can be grown throughout the year in different which means that even if they finished their flowering season has been completed, the main plant can grow and give rise to new plants in the next year without you having to grow without having to grow a new plant. Okay, so these perennial herbs, as we have studied, they are epiphytes or saprophytes or terrestrial type, and we are going to study about their characters in detail, but we have to study first of all the vegetative characteristics. When you say vegetative, it means their leaf, roots and stems. We are going to study about the floral characteristics, which includes the arrangement of the flowers along the main axis, which is called as inflorescence. We're going to study the floral parts and how the floral parts are arranged in the form of a perianth. And the third characteristic is the reproductive characteristic, which will include the androecium, which is the male, and the gynoecium, which is the female reproductive part. So we are going to study now about the vegetative characteristic, and the first vegetative characteristic is that of the root. Now when you look at the root of the orchids, they are adventitious. What does it mean by adventitious? The meaning of adventitious, it means that these kinds of roots, as you know, when a seed falls on the ground, first of all you will get the plumule and the radicle, isn't it? The plumule, if this is the seed, the plumule will give rise to the stem, radicle will give rise to the roots. So from when we say adventitious, it means these roots do not come out directly from this radicle, okay, but they arise from the stem. Okay, these roots arise from the stem, so they are called as adventitious. And they are tuberous, which means that they are tube-like in appearance, and fleshy. Fleshy meaning they are not thin, but they are filled with parenchymatous cells and are thick in appearance. There are generally there are two main types of roots. As you have studied, there are aerial roots. Remember, aerial roots are the roots that are found to be growing, and the main function of these aerial roots is that they absorb moisture because they contain a very special tissue along the epidermis, which is called as the velamen. The velamen is the sponge-like tissue which absorbs the moisture from the air. So besides the aerial roots, you also have other roots which act as the support for the plant, and these can be the climbing roots. So after the roots, I will show you here, you have these are the adventitious roots which arise from the stem, and there are fibrous roots also. Please ignore the spelling here, this is the wrong spelling. Then there we go on to the stem. Now the stem is the part of the plant which is erect. Sometimes it can be climbing, or sometimes it can be trailing. Trailing means that it just uh, it it trails along the ground. So, do you remember we studied about terrestrial type of orchids? Well, in terrestrial type of orchids, the stem is annual, which means that at the end of that season, the stem will disappear and will not will have to be will grow again in the next year. But in epiphytes, which are plants that grow on the trees, the stem will be perennial, which means that the stem will still be present throughout the year, even though the flowering season has ended. But in annual, the once the flowering season has ended, it will grow again in the next year. Okay, so the stem is usually, you can find it in the form of a rhizome. When you say rhizome, it means that this stem will give rise to rhizoids, will give rise to roots, and it will give rise to shoots. Okay, this rhizome is a thickened, it is a continuously growing shoot which is give rise to new shoots. So this rhizome, if you remember, we did on sympodial type of growth, right? So in sympodial type of growth, you can see here from the main stem, it give rise, this is a rhizome. Okay, so then the rhizome will give rise to numerous shoots. Okay, so the rhizome, or it can form pseudo bulbs. If you remember what are pseudo bulbs, pseudo bulbs are uh, the part of the stem or the internode which has become thickened, and this pseudobulb will be used, will be detached and give rise to new plantlets. So the example of pseudobulbs are from the genus Phages and Bulbophyllum. Okay, so remember girls, the stem, it is erect, it has two forms. The terrestrial form will be annual, that means it will have to grow again in each year, whereas an epiphytic form, the stem will be perennial, which means that it will be present throughout the year. And there are two different forms of the stem. It will either be converted into a rhizome or a pseudo bulb, and there are aerial roots also that grow out from the stem. And here is a picture of the erect stem. Okay, now we go on to the third vegetative characteristic, which is the leaf. Now the leaf is simple, which means that it is not it bears only one particular leaf from one pedicle, and it is alternate. Alternate means that one one leaflet one leaf alternates with the other one. Around the axis, there is an alternation of the leaves. They are not arranged side by side, but they alternate from one another. Okay, and they are rarely opposite. Sorry, yes, opposite will be sometimes they can be growing side by side, opposite to each other. Can you see this is an opposite type of leaf arrangement? Here it is alternate, here it is opposite. So rarely you will find that there are oppositely arranged leaves, and they are sometimes reduced to scales. Do you remember we did on the saprophytic species of the orchids? And in saprophytic species, you will notice that they do not have any chlorophyll. When they lack chlorophyll, even the leaves do not have any chlorophyll, and you will barely see the leaves. They are found in the form of scales. Okay, so they lack the green pigment chlorophyll. That is why they are reduced to scales. And then, so sorry girls, where are we? Okay, they are reduced to chlorophyllous scales as in saprophytic species. And then the leaf can be fleshy, that means very thick, and linear to ovate in shape. Linear means like it looks like this. Let me draw. Linear will be like this. I think you've seen the orchid leaves like this, or ovate, that means like this. They encircle the stem. The foliage leaf are absent in some species of Dendrophylax. So this plant does not have leaves. And in this species Pleurothallis, only one leaf is present in one shoot. That means if this is the shoot, you will have only one leaf which is present. This is found in the species Pleurothallis. Pleurothallis. Okay. So those are the vegetative characters we have studied on the leaf, roots and stems. Remember that the roots are adventitious. They are tuberous, fleshy. There are two types, namely aerial, which has velamen, and climbing, which helps in anchorage. You have the stem, which is erect, and it can be converted into rhizome or pseudobulbs. And you have the leaves, which are fleshy. They are simple, they can be linear or ovate, they can be alternately arranged or oppositely arranged, and these leaves are they have parallel venation because they belong to the monocot family or monocot subdivision. So that is the end of the vegetative characteristics.